The morning sun barely broke through the thick clouds over Millfield when Officer Sarah Chen received the emergency call that would change everything. She had been patrolling the quiet streets with her German Shepherd partner, Max, when the radio crackled to life with urgent voices. A section of the old Riverside mine had collapsed during the night shift, trapping 20 miners deep underground. Sarah's heart raced as she pressed the accelerator, her patrol car speeding toward the mining site on the outskirts of town. Max sat alert in the back seat, sensing the tension in the air. The 7-year-old Canine had been Sarah's partner for 3 years, and together they had handled everything from missing persons cases to drug searches. But nothing had prepared them for what they would face that day. The mine had been operational for over 40 years, providing jobs for hundreds of families in the small mountain town. Workers descended into its depths every morning, trusting that they would return home safely to their loved ones. The night shift had been routine until around 2 in the morning, when a series of small tremors caused a major support beam to fail. The collapse created a wall of rock and debris, sealing off the main tunnel where 20 men were working. As Sarah and Max arrived at the scene, chaos greeted them. Fire trucks, ambulances, and rescue vehicles surrounded the mine entrance. Families of the trapped workers had gathered behind yellow tape, their faces etched with worry and fear. Women clutched photographs of their husbands, while children asked when their fathers would come home. The sound of heavy machinery filled the air as rescue teams worked frantically to clear the debris blocking the tunnel. Mine supervisor Tom Rodriguez briefed Sarah on the situation. The collapse section was approximately 300 feet underground, and conventional rescue equipment was having difficulty penetrating the dense rock formation. Time was critical because the trapped miners had limited oxygen supply, and there was growing concern about potential gas leaks or secondary collapses. The rescue teams had been working for 6 hours with minimal progress. Sarah studied the mine blueprints spread across a makeshift table. The tunnel system was complex with multiple shafts and ventilation routes that connected to the main chamber, where the men were believed to be trapped. She noticed several smaller access tunnels that larger rescue equipment couldn't navigate, but that might be perfect for a search and rescue dog like Max. The German Shepherd had undergone extensive training in search and rescue operations, including work in confined spaces and disaster scenarios. His keen sense of smell could detect human scent even through layers of rock and debris. Sarah knew that Max might be their best chance of locating exactly where the miners were positioned and whether they were still alive. She approached the incident commander, Captain Williams, with her proposal. Initially, he was hesitant to send a dog into such dangerous conditions. The unstable mine structure posed significant risks, and there was no guarantee that Max would be able to find a safe path to the trapped men. However, as the hours passed and conventional rescue efforts continued to struggle, Captain Williams agreed to let Sarah and Max attempt a reconnaissance mission. Sarah carefully examined the mine entrance with Max, allowing him to familiarize himself with the scents and sounds of the environment. The air was thick with dust and the smell of diesel fuel from the rescue equipment. She knew that Max would need to filter through these distractions to focus on detecting human scent from deep within the mine. The bond between Sarah and Max was extraordinary. They communicated through subtle gestures and commands that had been perfected through years of training and partnership. Max trusted Sarah completely, and she had unwavering confidence in his abilities. As they prepared to enter the mine, Sarah checked her equipment one final time and secured a safety harness around Max that would allow rescue teams to monitor their progress and provide assistance if needed. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Sarah's shoulders as she realized that 20 families were counting on their success. The trapped miners included fathers, sons, and brothers who had simply been doing their jobs when disaster struck. Among them was Miguel Santos, a 42-year-old father of 3 who had worked in the mine for 15 years. His wife Maria waited anxiously outside, praying for his safe return. There was also James Thompson, a young man of 24 who had started working in the mine just 6 months earlier to save money for his upcoming wedding. His fiancée Jessica stood with the other families, her eyes red from crying as she watched the rescue efforts unfold. These were the faces and stories that motivated Sarah and Max as they prepared for their dangerous mission into the depths of the collapsed mine. The rescue operation had attracted attention from neighboring towns, with additional emergency personnel arriving to assist in any way possible. Local restaurants brought food for the rescue workers and families, while churches organized prayer vigils. The tight-knit mining community had come together in the face of tragedy, demonstrating the strength and resilience that defined their way of life. As Sarah attached a small camera to Max's harness to help guide their mission, she reflected on the training they had received for exactly this type of situation. The months of preparation, the simulated rescue scenarios, and the countless hours of practice had all led to this moment. She knew that success would require not only Max's extraordinary abilities but also careful planning, clear communication with the rescue team, and perhaps a bit of luck. The mine entrance loomed before them like a dark mouth leading into the earth. Sarah took a deep breath, gave Max an encouraging pat, and stepped forward into the unknown. Behind them, dozens of rescue workers, family members, and community supporters watched with hope and anxiety as the unlikely rescue team disappeared into the darkness, carrying with them the prayers and desperate wishes of an entire town. The temperature dropped noticeably as Sarah and Max descended into the mine shaft. Their headlamps cut through the thick darkness, revealing walls of rough rock and timber supports that groaned under the weight of the earth above. The air was stale and heavy, filled with the scent of earth and machinery. Every step echoed through the tunnels, creating an eerie soundtrack to their dangerous mission. Max stayed close to Sarah's side, his ears perked and nose working constantly to analyze the complex mixture of scents surrounding them. The German Shepherd's training had taught him to remain calm in stressful environments, but Sarah could sense his alertness as they moved deeper into the unstable mine structure. She maintained constant radio contact with the surface team, reporting their progress and receiving updates on the rescue efforts above ground. The main tunnel showed clear evidence of the collapse. Huge chunks of rock and twisted metal beams blocked their path completely, confirming why conventional rescue equipment had been unable to reach the trapped miners. Sarah examined the debris field carefully, looking for any gaps or alternative routes that might lead to the sealed chamber. The destruction was extensive, and she realized that even if they found the miners, extracting them would be an enormous challenge. Using the mine blueprints she had studied, Sarah guided Max toward a secondary ventilation shaft that connected to the main tunnel system. The passage was narrow and partially filled with fallen debris, but it appeared to be structurally sound. Max squeezed through the opening first, his smaller size allowing him to navigate spaces that would be impossible for human rescuers. As they worked their way through the alternative route, Sarah's radio crackled with updates from the surface. The rescue teams had managed to stabilize some of the main tunnel structure, but progress remained slow. Families continued their vigil outside the mine, and media crews from neighboring cities had arrived to cover the dramatic rescue operation. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily on everyone involved. Deep in the maze of tunnels, Max suddenly stopped and raised his head, his body language indicating that he had detected something significant. Sarah watched as her partner's nose twitched and his ears swiveled, processing scents and sounds that were imperceptible to human senses. After years of working together, she recognized the subtle changes in Max's behavior that indicated he had found human scent. The German Shepherd led Sarah through a series of connecting passages, some so narrow that she had to crawl on her hands and knees. The camera attached to Max's harness provided valuable footage to the surface team, allowing them to map their route and identify potential extraction paths. Sarah's breathing became labored in the thin air, but she pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that 20 lives depended on their mission. After what felt like hours of navigating the underground labyrinth, Max's behavior became even more excited. He began pawing at a section of the tunnel wall where loose rocks had created a small opening. Sarah could hear something beyond the debris that made her heart race with hope. It was the faint sound of human voices calling for help. She immediately radioed the surface team with their coordinates and began carefully removing loose stones from the opening. The work was delicate because any disturbance could trigger another collapse. Max stayed by her side, occasionally whining softly as he heard the trapped miners on the other side of the barrier. The sounds confirmed that at least some of the 20 men were still alive and conscious. Through the small gap she had created, Sarah could see lights moving in the chamber beyond. She called out to identify herself as a police officer with a rescue dog, and was met with shouts of relief and excitement from the trapped miners. The men had been trapped for nearly 12 hours and were running low on oxygen. Several had minor injuries from the initial collapse, but most were in relatively good condition. Miguel Santos was among the first to respond to Sarah's voice. The experienced miner had taken charge of the group, rationing their limited water supply and keeping everyone calm during the long hours of waiting. He reported that all 20 men were accounted for, though 3 had more serious injuries and would need immediate medical attention once they were extracted. Sarah established communication between the trapped miners and the surface rescue team through her radio. The incident commander was relieved to finally have confirmed contact with the men and began coordinating the complex extraction operation that would be required. The opening that Sarah and Max had found was too small for human evacuation, but it provided a vital lifeline for communication and potentially for supplies. The rescue teams above ground immediately began planning multiple approaches to reach the chamber where the miners were trapped. They would continue working to clear the main tunnel while also exploring the route that Sarah and Max had discovered. Engineering teams were called in to assess the structural integrity of various extraction options and to determine the safest method for bringing the men to the surface. Max remained alert throughout the operation, sensing the urgency and importance of their mission. The German Shepherd had performed exactly as his training had prepared him, using his extraordinary abilities to accomplish what human rescuers and sophisticated equipment had been unable to achieve. His success in locating the trapped miners had transformed a desperate situation into a rescue operation, with real hope for success. As Sarah worked to expand the communication opening, she learned more about the individual men trapped in the chamber. There was Robert Kim, a grandfather of 6 who had planned to retire from mining work at the end of the year. David Martinez was celebrating his 20th wedding anniversary that weekend, and had promised his wife Carmen that this would be his last shift before a vacation. Each man had a story, a family, and dreams that extended far beyond the dark confines of the collapsed mine. The trapped miners began sharing their limited food and water more systematically once communication was established. They worked together to create a more organized living space in their confined area, using their collective mining experience to assess their situation and prepare for the rescue operation. The morale boost from knowing that help was coming and that their families knew they were alive was immeasurable. Sarah and Max had been underground for over 4 hours, and the physical and mental strain was beginning to show. However, they maintained their position to serve as the critical communication link between the surface and the trapped miners. The small opening they had created became the focal point for the entire rescue operation, representing hope and the possibility of bringing 20 men home safely to their families. The rescue operation intensified as specialized equipment arrived from the state capital. Heavy drilling machinery was positioned at multiple points around the mine to create larger access shafts that could accommodate human evacuation. Sarah and Max remained underground, maintaining their crucial communication link while rescue teams worked around the clock to reach the trapped miners. Through the small opening, Sarah was able to pass emergency supplies including water, high-energy food bars, and basic medical supplies. The trapped miners were experiencing increasing difficulty breathing due to the limited oxygen supply in their sealed chamber. Medical personnel at the surface monitored their condition through radio communication, providing guidance on treating injuries and conserving energy. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the town's emergency physician, arrived at the mine site to coordinate medical care for the eventual evacuation. She worked closely with Sarah to assess each miner's condition through detailed questioning. 3 men required immediate medical attention for crush injuries sustained during the initial collapse, while others were suffering from dehydration and the beginning stages of carbon dioxide poisoning. Miguel Santos continued to serve as the leader among the trapped miners, organizing work details and keeping everyone's spirits up during the long hours of waiting. The experienced miner understood that panic and despair could be just as dangerous as the physical threats they faced. He led group discussions about their families and shared stories from their years of working together in the mine. Max proved to be more than just a search and rescue dog during the extended operation. The German Shepherd's presence seemed to have a calming effect on everyone involved, both the trapped miners who could hear his occasional barks and the rescue workers who drew inspiration from his successful mission. Children of the trapped miners asked their mothers when they could meet the brave dog who had found their fathers. As the drilling operation progressed, engineers discovered that the mine structure was more unstable than initially assessed. Secondary collapses had occurred in adjacent tunnels, creating additional hazards that complicated the rescue efforts. The incident commander made the difficult decision to slow the drilling. operation to prevent triggering larger structural failures that could endanger the trapped miners. Sarah received updates through her radio about the families waiting at the surface. The wives and children of the trapped miners had organized themselves into support groups, sharing food and comfort while maintaining their vigil. Local churches had opened their doors to provide shelter and meals, while school counselors worked with the children to help them cope with the stress and uncertainty. Maria Santos, Miguel's wife, had become an unofficial spokesperson for the families. Her strength and composure impressed the media representatives who had gathered to cover the story. She spoke eloquently about the risks that mining families lived with every day, and the tight-knit community that supported each other through difficult times. Her words reminded everyone that behind the dramatic rescue operation were real people with deep connections to each other. The trapped miners began sharing their most treasured memories. As a way to pass time and maintain morale, James Thompson talked about his upcoming wedding and the house he and Jessica were planning to buy. Robert Kim described his grandchildren's recent school plays and soccer games. These personal stories, transmitted through Sarah's radio, provided the rescue teams with additional motivation to overcome the technical challenges they faced. After 18 hours underground, the drilling team achieved a major breakthrough. They had successfully created a shaft that connected to the chamber where the miners were trapped, though it was still too narrow for human evacuation. However, it provided much-needed fresh air circulation that immediately improved the breathing conditions. For the 20 men, the engineering team worked on a complex plan to widen the newly drilled shaft while simultaneously clearing an alternative evacuation route through the tunnel system that Sarah and Max had explored. The dual approach would provide backup options and increase the chances of successful evacuation, but it also required careful coordination to prevent interference between the two operations. Sarah and Max had been underground for nearly 20 hours, surviving on energy bars and water while maintaining their critical position. The physical demands of the mission were taking their toll, but Sarah knew that her presence provided reassurance to the trapped miners and vital communication with the surface. Max remained alert and responsive, though his usual energetic demeanor had given way to a more subdued but steady presence. The trapped miners established a rotation system for staying near the communication opening, ensuring that someone was always available to relay information to Sarah and the surface team. They shared updates about their physical condition, described changes in their environment, and provided feedback about the rescue efforts they could hear and feel around them. David Martinez, the miner celebrating his 20th anniversary, had sustained a leg injury during the collapse that was becoming increasingly problematic. Dr. Walsh worked through Sarah to guide the other miners in providing emergency first aid, using supplies that had been passed through the small opening. The medical situation added urgency to the rescue operation and influenced decisions about which evacuation route to prioritize. As the second day of the rescue operation began, Sarah and Max faced their own challenges. The extended time underground in difficult conditions was physically exhausting, and Sarah had to make careful decisions about rationing their supplies. The radio communication with the surface became even more critical as it provided updates on the progress of multiple rescue efforts. The breakthrough shaft began showing signs of instability as engineers worked to enlarge it for human evacuation. Loose rock and debris fell into the chamber, forcing the trapped miners to take shelter in a more protected area. The engineering team had to balance the need for speed with the requirement for safety, knowing that any miscalculation could result in tragedy. Max's training included procedures for extended underground operations, but the duration and intensity of their mission pushed the limits of what they had practiced. Sarah monitored her partner carefully for signs of stress or exhaustion, knowing that his well-being was crucial not only for his own safety but also for maintaining the morale of everyone involved in the rescue operation. The media coverage of the rescue operation had attracted national attention, with news crews from major networks arriving to document the dramatic story. However, the incident commander maintained strict control over access to the mine site, ensuring that the rescue operation remained the top priority. The families of the trapped miners appreciated the privacy protection while still wanting the world to know about the courage and dedication of the rescue teams. Local businesses throughout the region had mobilized to support the rescue operation. Restaurants provided meals for the rescue workers and families, while hardware stores donated equipment and supplies. The outpouring of community support demonstrated the values and solidarity that defined life in the mountain mining town. The breakthrough came during the early hours of the second day, when engineers successfully stabilized the enlarged shaft enough to begin human evacuation. The first miner to be brought to the surface was David Martinez, whose leg injury required immediate medical attention. As he emerged into the morning sunlight, a cheer erupted from the crowd of families and rescue workers who had maintained their vigil throughout the night. Carmen Martinez rushed to embrace her husband as paramedics loaded him into an ambulance. Through her tears, she thanked everyone involved in the rescue operation, including Sarah and Max, who were still underground maintaining their communication post. David's successful evacuation proved that the rescue plan was working and provided hope for the 19 men still trapped below. Sarah coordinated the evacuation sequence from her position underground, working with Miguel Santos to determine the order based on medical needs and the logistics of the narrow shaft. The most seriously injured miners were prioritized, followed by those showing signs of respiratory distress from the prolonged exposure to poor air quality. Each evacuation took approximately 30 minutes, requiring careful maneuvering through the tight shaft. Max remained calm and alert throughout the evacuation process, though Sarah noticed that the German Shepherd was becoming increasingly tired from the extended mission. The dog had not had proper rest or exercise for over 24 hours, but his training and dedication kept him focused on his duties. The trapped miners had grown fond of Max, often asking Sarah to bring him closer to the opening so they could see him. Robert Kim was the second miner evacuated, and his reunion with his 6 grandchildren became an emotional highlight, captured by news photographers. The elderly miner had worried most about never seeing his family again, and his relief was evident as he hugged each grandchild. His successful evacuation further validated the rescue plan and provided additional motivation for the teams working to bring out the remaining 18 men. The Aussie evacuation process revealed new challenges as miners with larger builds had difficulty fitting through the shaft that had been sized for average-sized individuals. Engineering teams worked quickly to make modifications while maintaining structural integrity. These delays increased tension among the families and rescue workers, but Miguel Santos helped keep the remaining miners calm and organized. As each miner reached the surface, they shared their gratitude for Sarah and Max's life-saving discovery of the communication route. The stories of their long hours trapped underground began to emerge, revealing the leadership and cooperation that had kept all 20 men alive despite the desperate circumstances. Their accounts highlighted the importance of the hope that came from knowing help was on the way. Jessica Thompson arrived at the mine site just as her fiancé James was being evacuated. The young couple's emotional reunion reminded everyone of the personal stakes involved in the rescue operation. James had lost weight during his ordeal and showed signs of exhaustion, but his spirits lifted dramatically when he saw Jessica waiting for him. Their embrace symbolized the power of love and commitment that had sustained the trapped miners. Sarah began showing signs of fatigue after more than 30 hours underground, but she refused offers to be relieved by another officer. Her established communication relationship with the trapped miners and her partnership with Max were too valuable to disrupt during the critical evacuation phase. The incident commander respected her decision while ensuring that medical personnel monitored her condition closely. The evacuation process accelerated as the rescue teams gained experience and made refinements to their procedures. Miners who had been trapped for over 40 hours were emerging with remarkable composure and gratitude. Each successful evacuation brought cheers from the crowd and tears of relief from family members who had feared the worst during the long hours of uncertainty. Miguel Santos, despite being the unofficial leader among the trapped miners, insisted on being among the last to be evacuated. His priority was ensuring that every member of his team reached safety before he left the chamber, where they had all faced death together. This decision reflected the strong bonds and mutual responsibility that characterized the mining community. Max's role in the rescue operation had captured the imagination of people following the story through media coverage. Children from the local elementary school had made get-well cards for the dog, and pet supply stores had donated treats and toys. The German Shepherd had become a symbol of hope and determination that resonated far beyond the immediate community. As the number of remaining miners decreased, Sarah and Max prepared for their own evacuation from the mine. The communication route they had discovered and maintained had proven to be the lifeline that saved 20 lives. Their successful mission would be remembered as one of the most remarkable search and rescue operations in the region's history. Dr. Walsh coordinated medical care for the evacuated miners, most of whom were suffering from dehydration, exhaustion, and minor respiratory problems from the poor air quality. The 3 most seriously injured miners were transported to the regional medical center for specialized treatment, while others received care at the local hospital. All 20 men were expected to make full recoveries. The families who had maintained their vigil outside the mine were finally able to embrace their loved ones and begin processing the trauma of the experience. Many had gone without sleep for days, sustained only by hope and the support of their community. The successful rescue operation would strengthen the bonds among families and neighbors who had shared this life-changing experience. Maria Santos watched with pride and relief as her husband Miguel emerged from the shaft that had been his potential tomb. Their embrace was witnessed by hundreds of people who had followed the rescue operation, and their reunion represented the culmination of an extraordinary effort by dedicated professionals and volunteers. Miguel's leadership underground had been matched by Maria's strength and grace during the crisis above ground. As the final miners were prepared for evacuation, Sarah reflected on the partnership with Max that had made the rescue possible. The German Shepherd had performed beyond all expectations, using his training and natural abilities to accomplish what sophisticated equipment and human expertise alone could not achieve. Their bond and mutual trust had been tested under the most extreme circumstances and had proven unbreakable. The rescue operation had demonstrated the best qualities of human nature and professional dedication. Firefighters, police officers, medical personnel, engineers, and volunteers had worked together seamlessly to save 20 lives. The success of their efforts would provide inspiration and validation for emergency responders facing future challenges and would be remembered as a defining moment for the entire community. The final miner to be evacuated was Miguel Santos, who had served as the leader and source of hope for his trapped colleagues throughout their 48-hour ordeal. As he emerged from the shaft, a thunderous cheer erupted from the crowd that had grown to include hundreds of community members and supporters from neighboring towns. Miguel's evacuation marked the successful completion of one of the most challenging rescue operations in the region's history. Sarah and Max were the last to leave the mine, emerging to a hero's welcome that surprised the modest police officer. The crowd's applause was deafening as the German Shepherd bounded out of the mine entrance, his tail wagging with renewed energy now that their mission was complete. Sarah was exhausted but deeply satisfied, knowing that their partnership had been instrumental in saving 20 lives. The reunion scenes on the surface were emotional and heartwarming as families that had been separated by tragedy were brought back together. Children ran to embrace fathers they had feared they might never see again, while wives held husbands who had survived an experience that would change their perspectives on life forever. The power of these moments reminded everyone of what truly mattered in life. Max became an instant celebrity as news of his heroic role spread beyond the local community. The German Shepherd's photograph appeared on magazine covers and news websites, celebrating the remarkable bond between humans and animals in life-saving situations. Children from schools across the state sent letters and drawings to Max, expressing their admiration for his courage and dedication. The investigation into the mine collapse revealed that a combination of factors had contributed to the disaster, including geological shifts and aging infrastructure. However, the focus quickly shifted from assigning blame to celebrating the successful rescue and honoring the bravery of everyone involved. The mining company announced plans for comprehensive safety improvements and established a fund to support the rescued miners and their families. Officer Sarah Chen received commendations from the State Police Department and recognition from emergency response organizations across the country. Her decision to volunteer for the dangerous underground mission, combined with her skill in working with Max, had demonstrated the highest standards of police service and personal courage. However, Sarah remained humble about her role, consistently crediting Max and the entire rescue team for the operation's success. The rescued miners faced a long process of physical and emotional recovery from their traumatic experience. Most returned to work within a few weeks, though several decided to pursue different careers after confronting their mortality in the collapsed mine. The shared experience had created lasting bonds among the 20 men, and they organized regular gatherings to maintain their connections and support each other's ongoing recovery. Miguel Santos became a spokesperson for mine safety initiatives, using his experience and leadership skills to advocate for improved working conditions throughout the industry. His wife Maria joined him in these efforts, drawing on her own experience of waiting and hoping during the rescue operation. Together, they worked to ensure that other families would not have to endure the fear and uncertainty they had experienced. The town of Millfield established an annual celebration to commemorate the successful rescue and honor the dedication of all the emergency responders who had participated. The event became a source of community pride and an opportunity to recognize the values of cooperation, courage, and compassion that had defined their response to crisis. Sarah and Max were always honored guests at these celebrations. Max's story inspired the creation of enhanced search and rescue training programs for police dogs throughout the region. His success in the mine rescue demonstrated the unique capabilities that well-trained dogs could bring to emergency situations, leading to increased investment in canine units and specialized equipment. The German Shepherd's legacy would help save more lives in future emergency situations. The media coverage of the rescue operation brought positive attention to the often overlooked mining communities and the hard-working families who depended on this dangerous industry for their livelihoods. Stories about the miners' resilience and the community's support highlighted the strength and character that defined life in small mountain towns. This coverage helped generate support for improved mining safety regulations and worker protection programs. Sarah and Max returned to their regular patrol duties, though their routine work seemed almost mundane after their life-saving mission in the mine. The experience had strengthened their partnership and demonstrated the extraordinary things that could be accomplished through training, dedication, and mutual trust. Their bond had been tested under extreme circumstances and had proven unbreakable. The families of the rescued miners established lasting friendships with Sarah and Max, inviting them to birthday parties, graduations, and other special occasions. These relationships represented the human connections that had been forged through shared adversity and triumph. The police officer and her canine partner had become permanent members of an extended family created by their heroic actions. Years later, the mine rescue would be remembered as a defining moment in the community's history. Children who had been too young to understand the events would grow up hearing stories about the brave police officer and her remarkable dog who had saved 20 lives through their courage and skill. The tale would be passed down through generations as an example of what people could accomplish when they worked together with determination and hope. Max lived a long and healthy life, continuing to serve as Sarah's partner for several more years before retiring to become a beloved family pet. Even in retirement, the German Shepherd retained the alert intelligence and gentle nature that had made him such an effective search and rescue dog. His story continued to inspire new generations of emergency responders and remind everyone of the special bond between humans and animals. The mine eventually reopened with improved safety measures and modern equipment, providing continued employment for the community while honoring the memory of the dramatic rescue that had brought them all together. A memorial at the mine entrance commemorated the successful operation and served as a reminder of the courage, skill, and determination that had saved 20 lives during those frightening days when hope seemed lost, but heroes emerged to light the way to safety.